Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is a verbatim federal courtroom testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs trial. As reported by Inner City Press, the courtroom was tense. Diddy sat at the defense table, eyes locked on the floor, trying to hide the pressure building around him. The trial had already been a public disaster, but what happened on day 5 shattered everything. No one expected 50 Cent to show up even. Few were prepared for what he would say, but the moment he walked through those doors, everything changed. Cameras flashed, whispers rippled through the gallery, and Diddy's composure crumbled before everyone's eyes. For over a decade, 50 Cent had been one of the only celebrities openly critical of Diddy. Now he wasn't just trolling from afar, he was stepping into the courtroom to stand behind Cassie, and when he spoke, it wasn't for shock, it was for truth. What happened next would ignite a wave of celebrity silence breaking, secret files surfacing, and an empire starting to fall apart. This is what went down when 50 Cent stepped into Diddy's trial on day 5. Day 5 of the trial was supposed to be routine. Cassie was expected to return to the stand for follow-up questioning. The defense had been scrambling to regroup after damaging footage and emotional testimony from the day before. Diddy arrived with his legal team flanked by extra security trying to maintain a facade of control, but there was a tension in the air and electricity that hinted something unusual was about to happen. That's when the back doors of the courtroom opened, and in walked 50 Cent dressed in a sharp gray suit with dark glasses. He entered like a man on a mission. The courtroom gallery went still. Even the sound of papers shuffling stopped. Cassie's attorney turned to look. Diddy froze for a moment. Everything paused. No one expected him to show, not physically, not here. He had been making noise online for weeks, posting cryptic messages, sharing old interview clips, throwing shade. But this was different. This was a declaration. He didn't say a word at first. He simply took a seat near the back, folded his arms, and stared directly at Diddy. The prosecution gave each other glances. The defense visibly panicked. One of Diddy's attorneys leaned in urgently, whispering something in his. But Diddy wasn't listening. He was staring back at 50 like a man seeing a ghost from a past he couldn't control. The judge acknowledged 50's presence without a word. She nodded slightly in his direction, then addressed the court as usual. But the mood had changed. Something was coming, and everyone could feel it. Witnesses say Diddy's demeanor shifted immediately. His jaw clenched. His hands, which had been folded calmly minutes before, now twitched with nervous energy. He knew 50 Cent didn't show up to watch. He came to reveal something. When the lunch recess was called, reporters swarmed the courthouse steps. Cameras were rolling. Microphones were raised. Everyone waited to see what 50 Cent would say. And then he spoke. "I'm here because I've watched this industry protect the wrong people for too long." He began. "Cass is brave for doing what she's doing. She's not alone anymore. Not while I'm here." It wasn't just a sound bite. 50 laid it all out. He said he'd seen weird behavior from Diddy for years, things that made him uncomfortable, things other people laughed off, things he now saw for what they really were. Everybody knew something was off, he said, but they stayed quiet because Diddy had power, because he could end careers. He confirmed that he had been working with Cass's legal team behind the scenes, providing documentation, old photos, phone records, even a statement from a former bodyguard who claimed to have witnessed disturbing scenes at Diddy's private parties. 50 said he was tired of the silence, tired of being labeled crazy for calling out what others refused. Then came the real bombshell. He announced he was funding an independent investigation, hiring private investigators to dig into Diddy's history, not for clicks, he said, but because too many people have been hurt and too many people are still scared. Cass's team released a brief statement thanking 50 for his support, courage, and belief in truth. Diddy's lawyers, meanwhile, called the appearance a media stunt and tried to downplay its impact, but they were clearly rattled back in the courtroom. The tension was heavier than ever. Diddy wouldn't make eye contact with the gallery. His fingers tapped the table. His breathing grew heavier. 50 sat silently, arms crossed, watching. The defense requested a private sidebar with the judge. Rumors swirled. They were considering requesting a gag order on public commentary, but it was too late. The headlines were written. The footage of 50's courthouse statement went viral instantly. Celebrities who had been silent started to retweet Cass's original lawsuit. Others posted cryptic messages. The wall of silence was cracking, and 50 was the one who threw the first punch. When court resumed, Cassie took the stand again, but this time she wasn't walking in alone. She walked taller, more poised, more focused. It was a quiet confidence that only comes when someone knows they are finally being believed. The Courtroom noticed a difference instantly. Her voice, though steady before now, had an edge of determination. She didn't just recount memories, she delivered them like a warning. This wasn't just a testimony, it was a confrontation. She confirmed that she had spoken to 50 Cent's team, that she had shared messages, timelines, and recordings, that more witnesses had come forward since his public show of support. "I'm not scared anymore," she said, clearly locking eyes with the jury. "Not when people are finally listening." She went on to describe incidents previously too painful to bring up. One involved a trip to the Hamptons in 2017, where she said she was locked in a guest house for 2 days after texting a fellow artist. He said, "I embarrassed him in front of the industry." She recalled, "He said I was his property." The defense objected. The judge overruled. Cassie also described unwritten rules of Diddy's world, where to stand at parties, who she could talk to when she was allowed to leave the room. It wasn't love, it was control. Then came the moment that froze the room. She turned slightly toward the gallery, eyes steady. "I know some of you in here have seen what is done, and I hope you say something too." You could hear the sound of someone breathing heavily in the back. It was Diddy. His eyes locked on her, filled with something between disbelief and fury. One of his lawyers placed a hand on his shoulder. He didn't react. 50 Cent remained still, but his nod of approval didn't go unnoticed. Cassie's testimony hit harder than ever, not because of what she said, but because now she wasn't alone. The presence of someone as high-profile as 50 Cent gave her words gravity, and the jury felt it. Courtroom observers noted several members taking extra notes, leaning forward. One juror even shook their head slowly during parts of her story. It was no longer just Cassie versus Diddy. It was Cassie, 50 Cent, and a wave of changing public momentum crashing straight into Diddy's carefully built empire. The defense was crumbling slowly, publicly, and painfully. After 50 Cent's courthouse appearance and Cassie's renewed confident testimony, Diddy's lawyers appeared visibly disoriented. Gone was a polished legal machine that had strutted into court on day one. In its place was a team scrambling to revise a strategy that had been built entirely on controlling the narrative and portraying Diddy as calm, professional, and misunderstood. Court insiders revealed that overnight the defense held an emergency strategy session in their hotel, reportedly lasting until nearly 4 a.m. According to leaked notes, they were debating whether to keep denying everything outright or pivot to an emotional appeal, one that painted Diddy as a product of his environment, a flawed man who made mistakes but didn't deserve public crucifixion. It was a dramatic departure from the total innocence argument they had originally pursued. That morning, the prosecution capitalized on the chaos. They submitted a motion to introduce additional testimony from 2 new witnesses, former employees who claimed to have direct knowledge of events Cassie mentioned in her testimony. One was a former tour manager who said he once witnessed Diddy shouting at Cassie behind closed doors and storming out and punching a wall. Another was an exec assistant who had resigned after being told to monitor Cassie's whereabouts and report back hourly. The defense objected. The judge overruled, citing the relevance of pattern behavior. Meanwhile, the jury was paying close attention. Juror number 7, a middle-aged woman who'd been expressionless the entire trial, was now leaning forward, scribbling rapidly in a notebook. Juror 11, a young man who'd been distracted in earlier sessions, didn't take his eyes off the witness stand. Diddy himself seemed to be fraying. He stopped taking notes. He started whispering, then muttering to his attorneys. At one point, a court sketch artist caught him with his head in his hands. This was not the same man who had once ruled the music industry. This was someone watching control slip through his fingers outside the courtroom. The fallout was immediate, and massive clips of 50 Cent's courthouse statement exploded across Instagram, TikTok, and X. In less than 12 hours, over 60 million people had seen footage of him backing Cassie and calling the entire industry complicit in protecting men like Diddy. For years, celebrity circles had tiptoed around Diddy's name. The whispers were constant, but no one spoke publicly. Now, the floodgates opened. Usher, once Diddy's protege, quietly unfollowed him on Instagram that afternoon. Mary J. Blige, another longtime collaborator, removed every image of them together from her grid. Justin Bieber went further. He deleted multiple posts praising Diddy and released a cryptic story that read, "Sometimes we learn too late who people really are." Within 24 hours, dozens of artists had weighed in. Cardi B posted, "Protect women no matter how powerful the man is." Drake liked a tweet that said, "Real ones speak up, cowards stay quiet." And even celebrities outside of music like Viola Davis and Gabriel Union shared messages of support for Cassie. But the most dramatic shift came from someone no one expected. Producer who had remained anonymous for over a decade suddenly spoke out on X. "I worked on 3 of Diddy's projects. I saw things I kept quiet, not anymore." That post alone had over 300,000 likes by the end of the day. Inside sources told Variety that top executives at Revolt, Diddy's media company, began holding emergency Meetings advertisers were pulling back. At least 2 sponsors for upcoming brand events had rescinded their deals. One Revolt employee told a reporter, "People are jumping ship. Nobody wants to be the last one standing next to him when this all comes down." And through all this, 50 Cent kept posting. Each message was calculated. One showed an image of him and Cassie backstage at an award show years ago, captioned, "You always deserved better." Another post read simply, "Yay 5, it starts here." The message was clear. He wasn't done back in court. Cassie's return to the stand was nothing short of devastating. It was her second time up that week, but this time she didn't just speak about what happened to her. She laid bare the system that enabled it. Her tone was measured, but the content was explosive. She detailed what she called control architecture, term she used to describe how Diddy's team kept her isolated. According to Cassie, her calendar was managed down to the hour she wasn't allowed to book her own travel. If she was seen speaking to another man in the music industry, someone from Diddy's circle would pull her aside and remind her, "Who made you?" She referenced one incident from 2016 where she said Diddy allegedly slapped a phone out of her hand after she laughed at another artist's joke during a backstage moment at an award show. He said, "I was embarrassing him, that I didn't know how to act, that I needed to learn respect." And then came the moment that shifted the jury's mood entirely. Cassie introduced an old audio recording played through the court sound system with the judge's approval. In it, Diddy's voice could be heard yelling, "Don't test me, Cass, you know what happens when you push me." The courtroom fell silent. The audio had never been heard publicly. Her legal team claimed it had been obtained from an old cloud sync iPad that Cassie had forgotten about until earlier that month. The defense tried to object, but the damage was done. Diddy's face turned pale. One of his lawyers leaned in and whispered, but he didn't respond. Another courtroom sketch artist captured the exact moment. He dropped his pen and stared blankly at the audio player like it had betrayed him. By the time court adjourned that day, even Diddy's staunchest supporters in the gallery looked uneasy. His public image, cool, composed, and control, had officially imploded. Cass's second day on the stand proved what everyone was now starting to understand. This trial wasn't just about a single relationship. It was about what happens when unchecked power meets silence. Day 5 was already tense. Before it even began, the media was buzzing about Justin Bieber's cryptic online comments the night before, and the building was surrounded by security like something historic was about to go down. Nobody quite knew what. But then, without warning, at 10:13 a.m., everything changed. That's when 50 Cent walked into the courtroom, not through a side door, not with security shielding him. He stepped in alone in a tailored black suit and dark glasses, walking straight down the center aisle like it was a stage. He didn't speak, he didn't even nod, but the energy shifted instantly. People who had been leaning back in their chairs straightened up. Phones that had been tucked away were suddenly pulled out again. Reporters stared at each other wide-eyed. This wasn't just a courtroom. It was now a scene. Diddy saw him instantly. Witnesses said his body language changed the moment 50 entered. His jaw tightened. He leaned forward in his chair and whispered something to his attorney. His fingers, which had been resting calmly on a notepad moments before, now dug into the edges of the table. The prosecutor noticed it too. She paused her pacing and let the moment breathe before continuing, as if to acknowledge that a new witness hadn't entered the courtroom, but a statement had. Cass's eyes flicked toward 50 Cent just once. No smile, no reaction. But the moment didn't go unnoticed. The defense team began scrambling, whispering, passing papers. Diddy himself glanced back more than once, visibly rattled. And 50 just sat there, arms folded, stone still. What no one realized was that 50 wasn't just there to watch. He was there to be seen. What happened next wasn't part of anyone's strategy, not Diddy's, not the defense's, not even 50's, but it changed the courtroom forever. During Cass's afternoon testimony, she began recounting a moment that struck a nerve. A 2018 incident at Diddy's Miami estate. She described being locked in a private room for over a day after being caught speaking to another executive. But it was Diddy who couldn't stay still. As she spoke, he began shaking his head. Then came the whispers to his attorney. Then came the bouncing leg. Then he exploded. "That's not what happened," he shouted, slamming his open palm against the table. The noise echoed like a gunshot through the courtroom. Everyone froze, even the court reporters. Fingers paused mid-keystroke. Cassie didn't flinch. Judge Harmon raised a gavel. "Mr. Combs, this is your only warning. One more outburst and you will be removed." But Diddy didn't stop. His eyes weren't on Cassie anymore. They locked onto the back of the courtroom on 50 Cent. "And you," he growled. Pointing, "You've been waiting for this, haven't you? You'll regret it." Security moved instantly. Two guards closed, and behind Diddy's seat, one stood between him and the gallery. The room was tense, as if everyone expected the next moment to be even more explosive, but 50 didn't react. Not a word, not a flinch, just a slow, deliberate shift in posture. He leaned back further in his chair, crossed one leg over the other, and stared. Cassie continued her testimony like nothing had happened, and the judge, she didn't. Cooler recess, she let the silence hang in the air as she looked Diddy directly in the eyes and said, "Control yourself, or I will." For a man who built his legacy on always being in control, that one sentence hit harder than anything else. As the afternoon wore on, the courtroom grew quiet and nobody dared speak out or turn. Even reporters, who usually slipped in and out for bathroom breaks, stayed glued to their seats. Why? Because for the first time in decades, Diddy didn't seem untouchable. The outburst had exposed something nobody had seen before, not in interviews, not in scandals, not even in past lawsuits. This wasn't the smiling mogul or the cool businessman. This was a man unraveling in real time, and while Diddy was unraveling, 50 Cent was rising. Outside, the courthouse whispers had already started turning into headlines. TMZ reported 50 Cent stares down Diddy in courtroom showdown. Twitter flooded with clips from old interviews where 50 had warned about Diddy for years. Suddenly, what once sounded like petty rap beef now seemed like chilling foresight. One video from 2009 resurfaced, 50 telling a host, "There's things about Puff that just don't sit right with me. That man got secrets." Now those secrets were crawling out from under every stone inside. Diddy had gone silent. His legal team circled around him during breaks, speaking low and fast. Cassie's attorneys, on the other hand, were glowing. Their star witness had kept her composure through it all. Their biggest opponent had cracked in front of a federal judge. Even the jury seemed to notice. One older juror, who had previously taken note methodically, now stared straight ahead, arms crossed, lips tight. Another scribbled furiously as Cassie spoke, as if she didn't want to forget a word. And still 50 Cent sat in the back at one point. Court security asked if he planned to stay the whole day. He didn't answer. He didn't need to, because by then it was obvious this wasn't just day 5 of a trial. This was a day the illusion shattered, the day a silent room watched a powerful man come undone, the day the music industry realized it wasn't business as usual anymore. And it all changed when 50 Cent showed